of food, it was very blurry. And in fact, I think it didn't really exist so much. And today, I think also that boundary is blurry, right? Because we think of things as giving us doses of things that are good for us or things that are bad for us. And we saw that with like the insanity about meat with Victorians, and what was that going to do for you? It was going to make you really lusty if you ate too much. And so it's this idea of quantity and how much you should have and the order you should have it in, all of that sort of thing. So a lot of these things that kind of are they're definitely recipes, show up in medical treatises. They're materia medica from the medieval period. But then you have the other kind of recipe that you've already mentioned, where how do you learn it? Somebody shows you. And so I'll talk about those differences in a little bit more detail. So if we think about this, no matter when you start writing out a list of anything, it's putting it in a hierarchy. This is an example of how can you try to get around, subvert that sort of hierarchical organization. And one is, this sort of round robin or circular, but still, this is like the seating at the round table. This is the medieval example of King Arthur's court. But how do you have hierarchy in this as well? Yeah.
And then the king is at the top.
Yeah, so there's still a bit of a top-down thing going on. But what if it's just a round table in the middle of the room? How would you have hierarchy in that? Yeah.
Maybe like if you're the king or the queen or whatever, like who are sitting closer to you are the ones you care about the most, and then the ones who are
Farther away and across the table are the ones that are lower ranked, more distant. Yeah, and you have even I think of also if it's not necessarily, so it doesn't have to be spatially just top down to be a ranking and an ordering. List left to right is also that it's the sequence, right? And so my writing, the glyphs actually go in this sort of S shape. You read them a lot of times in this S shape, and you think, oh, well, that's not, but it's still, it's a particular set way going from one to the next. Yeah, and so this is Jed Goody, who wrote about the industrial foods in that article last week, talked about this issue of recipes, medical receipts, and those sorts of things, how they always have this sort of order to them. And so keep that in mind as you work on some stuff. And he also was he was analyzing British schools and seating arrangements of dining halls and that sort of thing, and who gets listed as people who attend and who gets guests that are listed and guests that aren't, and that sort of thing. So he's talking about different kinds of lists too, besides just the recipes. So you have this way. And, oh yeah, so you already mentioned that it implies or lists certain ingredients, the things that are necessary for it, the set of actions sometimes, but a lot of times no. Have you ever seen any of those cookbooks that you just feel like they've left something out? I don't know how to get from here to there. And they're implying or assuming a set of actions that maybe you don't have any experience with. Or working with somebody cooking, and they're telling you over the phone or something, oh yeah, this is how I make my brownies. And then you try to follow it, and you realize there's something crucial you left out of the whole thing, because you don't get the same kind of result. So a set of actions, And then, and then what it's supposed to, it's all with this idea of what it's supposed to be like in the end. So it's this imagined sort of thing that you're moving towards and creating. And so here, in the early text, there's no difference between things that are receipts or recipes for food versus medicines. They're all, and it's also the same word that you use for prescription. Like you have your receipt, and you might go to the druggist or the chemist or whatever to get the things, and it could be a medical prescription, it could be something else. And so they hold that in common. And one thing that Jack Goody especially emphasized is, what are we doing? And especially once it moves into written things, if you're taking quantities of things, measurements of things, treating them in a certain way with particular results expected, it's very much akin to the scientific method, right? You know, it's a kind of chemistry that people do every day when they're cooking. And you can really see the birth of cookbooks and written down recipes along with the birth of other sorts of scientific recording. Have any of y'all heard of an aid memoir? Aid memoir? Have you, Casey? So it's something where there's just like 3, 4 main ingredients might be written down, kind of like the highlights, the main thing that you need to know. And it will say things like, prepare the velouté sauce, add the, but it's really just like a trigger. Oh yeah, and this, to make it this way, I've got to add the tarragon, and then that'll, finish the sauce the right way. Or roast the chicken, then add this. And so the whole roasting the chicken thing, you're supposed to already know how to do. You're not even told about it. And I think of those, remember all those different Maya cacao vessels with inscriptions on them, and they would just say cherry cacao, or those different. I think those are sort of like an aid memoir too. Well, the main thing is that it's got to be this cherry flavor to make it for it to be the right thing. Okay, so we have these recipes. And then there's this division, again, Goody's the one who has kind of emphasized this, but you see this in a lot of culinary history writing, a lot of anthropology of food writing, looking at these differences between rural and sort of urban settings, and things that are passed along in face-to-face interactions, word of mouth versus written down stuff. And one thing that Goody particularly emphasized is that with this sort of oral tradition, rural cooking, you might have, take the example of brownies, everybody has their own way that they make brownies, maybe, it depends on your family, right? There's certain recipes that are sort of standard things that people make a lot, and they don't even look at a cookbook, or they've learned from their family how to do it. And so what does that mean? That you have a main set of ingredients and a main technique, and then there's lots and lots of variations, right? So you can think of soup recipes or stews or that sort of thing. Can you think of an example where you have a lot of, like, it's something that people just make? Yeah. Spaghetti sauce, yeah. Great one. And that's totally standardized, right? So how much oregano, whether you have basil or not, all those sorts of things. And it's also what's on hand. So a lot of rural cooking is taking what's standard in the kitchen and making use of that, and what's accessible for whatever reason for that social group or, you know, those people involved. And then what's the other thing with learning about a recipe with a person? What happens? Yeah.
A lot of times, like with like slicing of things,
Mhm.
like oh, pinch of this, or
Mhm.
throw in this, or like stir until this happens. They don't have like set instructions that like it's kind of like a case to case situation. I
Uh-huh.
feel like.
Yeah.
Or qualitative or quantitative.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that?
It's what you see,
Uh-huh.
it's what you feel, not so much what there is.
Mm-hmm. And is it even so much what the person's saying? You know, so a little bit, well, that gives you this general idea, but then you get to see how much you see the, you know, the effects of that, or you taste it, or you have that immediate kind of feedback. So it's this way of learning through all your senses, right, of how to do it. The other thing, too, is, so there's a broader chance of learning, and maybe you're learning in ways you don't even realize, like the sound of something. They might not say, oh, wait until it sizzles, but you'll just hear it and you'll see it happening, and they might talk about, well, wait till you see the bubbles. So a visual, but really it's what you're hearing that's keying you into that's the right stage of something. And the set of actions, what the actions, like what the motions are like, and how, you know, how much resistance you get from whatever the thing is you're stirring, that sort of stuff. That it's hard to quantify, right? And at the same time, there's a way that there's a social ranking that's going on, because who has the authoritative knowledge in this case? The pupil's not going in and saying, oh no, you know, you're doing that wrong, because you're learning from whoever's showing you, right? So there's a little bit more of a social ranking in that teaching relationship. So how do you think that compares then to reading a recipe and learning it that way? What are some of the biggest differences, other than it's written down? Yeah.
I feel like it's just more exact. Like, since you're not having anyone show you what they would do, all you have is to read exactly what's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that reading also implies that you're literate too, right? So that's sort of selecting a certain group within the society. It's not everybody. What, you were going to say something else? No. What else? Yeah.
There's more of a conception that there is a right way to do something.
Yeah.
You're your own teacher, or you learn from a book or something.
Right. That it gives it a certain authority because it's printed down. You know, if they went to the trouble and it gets made into a book, then it must be pretty good. Have y'all had any experience with bad recipes? So yeah, that's not the case. You can have great sort of this rural face-to-face cooking style, very creative. Yeah, what about that issue of creativity? Yeah.
I know from personal experience, even following a recipe, I always change something.
Uh-huh.
Just because that's...
It's because you're an anarchist, right?
I always
Yeah.
either take something out or add something to change
Yeah.
the flavor of it to something that's more appealing.
Uh-huh.
For
Yeah.
me.
Right. Uh-huh.
I do this thing where I'll like look at a picture, like I'll see like the end result of the recipe, and I'm like, yeah, and I'll like try to replicate it.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like if I went back and looked at the recipe, it'd probably be very different.
Uh-huh.
But like my outcome has the same ingredients, so I'm like, yeah, I got it. So I feel, I don't know, like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that's a whole other level too, in that sort of imagined outcome that you're
Right,
going, you
yeah.
know, the future action that you're aiming towards. So yeah, this idea of right versus wrong, and you know, the 40 different recipes for pound cake, they're not written down, and there are all these little variations, and they're all equally valid, equally authentic. A lot of these readings in the cooking technology book emphasize authenticity. But what happens with writing down, so this is, and it's also too, he's dealing, Goody's emphasizing this urban setting too, where you have lots of people coming in from lots of different contexts. You can end up having a large repertoire of lots of different sorts of preparations. So within the rural setting, you may have a few main recipes that you do little variations of, but it's a sort of a stock set of, well, we're having beans and rice today. And here it's lots and lots of different sorts of recipes coming in. And then the other thing is like what you already said, the authority of it being printed, but that you're learning just by reading. And so it becomes more accessible if you are literate. Anybody can go and read it. The very first sort of cookbook kinds of things were written for the court. This is an example of a 14th century one for King Richard III. And they're sort of records within the royal court of these preparations. Why do you think they're writing this down in royal courts? First of all, because they can. But why else?
Make sure they get it the right way.
Yeah, the right way, because you have here's where creativity is being stifled a bit, because it's for the king, and so it has to be the right way for the king. We don't want all these crazy variations going on. And then what you see too is more of a reliance, and this is sort of the trajectory of cookbooks as a whole, this interesting issue of exotic ingredients and how much they come into play, rather than just stuff you have in your kitchen. And then what I've already mentioned, this idea of scientific measuring, that because someone's not there to say, oh, well, you really need a half teaspoon of salt, it's all written down and it's tested. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into making these cookbooks. It seems pretty easy, but they, nowadays they do all this, send it out to other people who've never seen the recipe before. They get people to try them out and see where it works and where it ends up having a predictable, reliable outcome. And so what does that mean, though? If you have it written down and it's precisely measured, it means that whoever can read that can make that same thing, right? So you can eat like a king if you want to. Whereas, does it go the other way for the word of mouth? It's much harder to transmit really widely.
I watch your network a lot, and I feel like that's kind of like both direct and indirect, because like if some people have TVs in their kitchens and they like to cook while they're watching a show and follow along with it, and you get to watch and see what they're doing, but at the same time you're missing out on they might not show you everything, or you don't get to smell it, or
Yeah, and we'll do a whole, we'll watch some food shows and sort of look at the anthropology of some of those and some of the food competitions. Because it's something. But as far as recipes go, I find it kind of tough, actually, to keep up. That I'll make notes or something, because I can't, it's packaged to be done in 30 minutes, but it's like a 2-hour recipe. So, so they're leaving out something. So, if you think about this sort of food and medicine relationship, you have, with all of this sort of accumulation of knowledge and experience, and it's preserved and stable knowledge because it's written down, that you have a chance to then build upon that and tinker with it and then transmit it. in a way that's very much, you know, it's kind of the same, it's the same basis as for scientific advancement. But oddly enough, yeah, this issue of spontaneity. And the reading about the Colombian cuisine also brings in, this is in the cooking technology book, it also brings in the setting in which you're consuming that recipe matters too, right? So it's the preparation, the actions and all of that, but part of the outcome is how you're going to enjoy that food. And they look at 3 different main settings in Colombia, and especially recently. This example of fine dining, I put in the link to one of the examples in the reading. Later. And so here's the website for it. I'll go to the menu, and the website's sort of crazy. They need to work on it. So. And does anybody read Spanish in here? Yeah. What do you see here? Can you read it?
Which one is this?
Any of them. Uh-huh. Yeah, asparagus and sausage.
That's for a pasta recipe.
And it's not just any, so chorizo is a kind of sausage. And so what makes it Colombian? You know, what's making this sort of authentically local food? Well, it's que hace el tío Memo, and you know, it's this one person's particular sausage that they make right there. In that community, and then the asparagus, even though that's not native to Colombia, it wasn't domesticated in Colombia. It's a European import as far as a plant to grow. It's some that's grown right there. So it's this sort of local foods, local preparations. Yet, let's see. Let me get a picture of some of the. Yeah, those are kind of boring looking. I was trying to get to, and this is, yeah, the menu of the day. Dang. It doesn't, they don't have a lot of pictures in this. Anyway, it's, let's see. Let's see, maybe they're, let's see if the Instagram will give us some ideas of it. There we go. So what kind of food would you say that looks like? Like, what would you imagine the dining, we have a view of the kitchen. What do you think the,
Fine dining?
yeah, and how do you know that?
Because of the way it's placed on the plate.
So the presentation of it, what else?
It's like smaller portions.
Yeah.
It's not huge.
Yeah, not big, like, feed a hungry ranch hand servings, but small and delicate and artful. So that's the other thing about recipes, right? So you can have what the preparation of the food, but it's also the how it's presented and the setting in which it's presented. So here's a view of the dining room for this place. Yeah. And so, yeah, so even if it's a food of poverty, like the rice and beans, in this elegant setting, it changes its social meaning. And then she also talks about these comfort food restaurants. And so here's an example of that. It'll load. And here's some, so how does this strike you? Some of the images.
It's like any other restaurant, like a family
What is it? Here's the menu. Chicken, fish, pasta. So how is it local? How do you get the local out of this? Let's look at, maybe a bit better in the intro.
Maybe if like the cuisine isn't necessarily local, the ingredients are.
Yeah, that's it. I was looking for one that was, would be obviously some, like cassava or something. But it's the same sort of thing, and it's also kind of food that you would prepare at home, like salads and soups and local style soups, and the palm hearts and that sort of thing. It's you could walk into somebody's house and have this same sort of food very easily. Whereas the other place, it'd be it's possible, but it would be a very, unusual case for that to happen. And then there is the other main place. So that the casual comfort food restaurants are sort of for business people working. They get their lunch break, they go and get a meal. They don't have enough time to prepare anything at home. Have any of y'all been to any of these kinds of markets? Yeah, where have you been?
Up in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
We got a few that pop up once in a while.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so it's sort of they're like farmers markets. Where have you been?
Oh, me?
Uh-huh.
Like at the beach, the East Coast, I think
Uh-huh.
that's the name, I don't remember that, but, in Delaware, they have, like, around the marinas, they have stuff, so they'll have, like, the fish and stuff on one side, and then they'll have, like, vegetables
Mhm.
and stuff on the other side.
Go ahead.
San Antonio.
In San Antonio, yeah, down in sort of the downtown area, or?
Like, I don't know, we went to the Market Square one day and then it was just like a big local.
Mhm. What about you?
In Bali in Thailand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, what was that like?
There was like a lot of weird stuff, like just like a completely like full pig's head with its like tongue sticking out. There's just really weird things there, and like a ton of fish, and
Uh-huh.
I don't know, a lot of stuff I wouldn't eat.
But it was something that's consumed.
Yeah.
They weren't displayed as oddities.
Yeah.
But
It's weird because like they weren't like covered or anything, like anything that was like supposed to be frozen. Like they're all just kind of out on ice. It's like
Yeah.
bizarre.
Yeah. If you go to Seattle, the fish market there, I mean, there's a very famous, yeah. And did you go when they were throwing the fish around? Yeah. But those are just fish out on ice, yeah. But that implies freshness too. These are not things that have been refrigerated and frozen for a long time. This is stuff right out of the water, and they're laying it there, and they're expecting people to buy it quickly. And the same with the fruits and the vegetables too. A lot of these are things that don't necessarily transport well over long distances, but yet you can get them at these markets. And now, I don't know about like in Chicago and some of these sort of pop-up farmers markets. Was there food served there?
So there's this really shady Filipino market, kind of by the docks.
Uh-huh.
Pretty great.
Uh-huh.
My roommates from the Philippines.
Yeah.
It's like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
It has some weird things. It had balut.
Uh-huh.
You know what a balut is? That's the duck still in the egg.
Oh,
You just
wow.
Suck it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had that there. That was interesting.
Wow.
His dad just sucked it up like
Yeah.
a noodle.
It's a treat.
It was all right. Cool.
Yeah. And so you go there to get like really fresh and just this is totally not cookbook learning sorts of foods, but just, and here's an example from like a typical, you just get the stuff in. I'm thinking also like in Budapest, in London, in Chelsea market, there are all these different markets. It's not just Latin America, but very common in Latin America. These are, well, potatoes. And then this, that's a green tomato, and this is probably pork rind, or it might be fried yuca. And that below it, it looks like some kind of stew. So you have a lot of sort of spicy stews, cassava-based spicy stews, sometimes with nuts, like that. But that would be really typical, like market food. And so you can see that the setting also plays into that rural versus urban in the way that Goody outlines it. Oh, okay. Y'all can get started. I'm going to go up and get the handout for this. But I want groups, like manageable groups. I guess of about 5 people, and we need to have at least 1 laptop in each group. And go into ReggieNet and get the PowerPoint and pick one of these. And in the Brownie article, there's an embedded link to Baker's Chocolate, a whole bunch of, like, one of the earliest cookbooks that does a lot of chocolate recipes. Okay, form groups. I'm going to get the handout because I want you to look at the example of a recipe. Choose one recipe from one of these sources. So it can be anything. You've got to pull up the digital image, digital document, pick a recipe, and then think about, there's a whole set of questions.
If we don't have a group with a computer, can we use our phones?
Yeah. There are enough computers that we can evenly distribute to people.
All the people that have computers
Oh, yeah.
initially, so we can
No, it's just
base
hard
it
to
around
see.
it.
I think on a phone, some of these are going to be really hard to see. It'll be better on a larger screen. So, four or 5 people per group. I'll be right back. I'll hang out. Yeah, no, you may have to move. Let's see how it works.
5 or 6.
14.
That's the one.
My left.
So I found the brownies. Oh, really? I thought it was one of those. She's doing it right now.
No, information theses. I'll let you know when you rate it. It's gonna be
Oh, you said this one?
no, yeah, her the 3 theses.
I think when what's on, like, I mean, I registered. Oh, yeah. Like, I was supposed to start register. Yeah.
And you just have to
But,
share
yeah,
your registration.
I haven't even met with Brian.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't trust her half the time.
Next.
every time I go talk to
He's
him.
nice, but he's just
Yeah, every time I go talk to him, like, I feel like you don't want me to be there right now.
Yeah.
like you told a girl, someone in archaeology class, she's like, do this count say it's okay, linguistics, it's like the Western doesn't count, so I just think linguistics is great.
Oh, back. No, I know this is not
Yeah, he
for.
lost a lot.
Did you really? He wasn't a big
Because I
guy.
worked in his staff.
Like now for half this semester, last semester before. Yeah.
Everyone complained, they're like, really changing stuff, like happening to discuss from
Remember what class was before?
I know a lot of people complain about this place.
I'm not so sure. I think it's just like
Yeah.
you can view the PDF though. That's what I mean, like Apple. So I guess they're all
6:30 to 9:30.
Yeah.
I have to. Those ones that I'd rather hear about. I want to.
Oh, she's taking teachers from that.
Yeah. Right. But so I'm all that computer meetings.
Yeah, there's like
Getting over
You don't really picture your topic yet, which I probably should.
yeah.
I don't really help you.
No, they're literally just like pick like out of the four, just pick one and then just write a paper on it. It's not how there's like literally
Rice.
We also put like
Yeah.
they really make you do that. They make you do a time period and
And then Irish squash.
so it's usually like if you whatever you pick you have to
I like potatoes.
compare it to other
Apples. Potatoes or apples? Yeah, it's a great class, honestly.
You go to that last meeting.
I'm doing this.
This is like the best I've ever done.
Okay. Good job.
I mean, they could just like.
Who are you working at?
I remember
So-
yeah, I got the color and.
So does everybody have the PowerPoint? Did you get to the links? Anybody having trouble? So you just choose one recipe out of one of the.
That's a plan.
I sent it.
Like if you like, like maybe gonna. Yeah.
We have the bar
You said we pick up
One recipe out of any one of those. So you gotta go to one of these, click on it.
So,
we only have space for one recipe.
you need to think about, like, look at the one recipe and go through and think about those different topics. And so you go to this, like here's Hannah Glass. You can you flip through. There's a table of contents. You can use that, but you can just. These are all recipes. Ah, that's a recipe right there.
I was like, how big is this group?
This is like the urban cooking.
I'm the bartender. They
Who y'all working with? So just go through and think these ideas about, like, read through it. What does it imply to have around with you? Does it seem like
Did we turn just one?
let's talk about it. You don't have to write it. This is something that I want to
Are you still in the
I have sets of recipes.
I think I already have.
Y'all find something?
But that was like
There's a bunch of ingredients and what's the
it's like making shit.
Sounds very elegant.
Yeah.
From what I hear,
You can also use
yeah, I can look for one. I'll try to have
And so,
one.
there's a little bit of information about the question, how many times, yeah, we're going
So, do we still have potatoes? Are we looking?
Yeah.
Just like it's like different like preparations of potato eggs, like potatoes and milk.
The article is a really nice,
Fried to kind of like
go down.
potatoes turned. It says the bottom of that one.
At least you can find out.
What knowledge of assumptions and allegations?
Yeah, I'm just writing that in.
I guess for technology, it's kind of useful, but I guess that you have like a regular kitchen.
No, I think they're just books.
Yeah. The very first brownies, it was something that they called them. And they still serve it. But there's also this, what I was trying to show you.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
In this one,
I mean, you guys know how to beat. Yeah, I know.
So you gotta know how to use it.
it's this one, right here. So where you see that book, and you click on that. And then you can go, just read it online.
Like a course code.
And look, so like choose, you could choose one of those too. And there are a gazillion of them.
This isn't a good book. Should we just go back to the other one?
Oh, but like
So which one out of that list?
So many people, so many healthy people. I know on the job that see Bill Bannon text from or like very simple recipe. Use it to be called
Yeah.
that would be knowledge too.
There's how to make tea, and then there's a cut, but let's go to how to
Like a line. Yeah.
And then the basically.
Can you, it doesn't allow you to go
Seems like a lot of these recipes are from scratch.
Oh, no. Here, you want to use it up here? Because I think it's hard to see, too. And this is like the phone.
So you can just minimize that. And then,
We're on the good eats.
good things to eat?
Is that what we're on? Or?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, we're at the ideal bartender moment.
Yeah. So.
Is there room for us to take it off? Or is it okay?
What do you mean?
Like to, just to turn the screen off, or is it
Oh,
okay?
well, so y'all can.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can stand up here and look at it, but it's fine for
Okay.
a project too. God, it's loading really slowly. Oh no, keep going.
They're just
It's in
blank
there.
pages.
It's blank pages. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the person who wrote it, Rufus Estes. Very, you know, popular.
1911.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking for a table expert.
That's what I was looking for.
They don't always have, so.
Oh, it's weights and measures. That's kind of awesome, though. They have that on there.
So exactly, that's part of that assume, you know, what they assume versus what they feel like they need to put in there. So there it starts with the recipes.
What's a what's a knuckle of veal?
Place a knuckle of veal.
I was like, I don't know what that is. I know what veal is. Don't know what a knuckle of
Oh, we had the measurements. We can go back to it. Maybe it
Oh,
tells us what a
Jesus.
knuckle is.
Click back 6,000 times.
Is it just that one page?
No, I can keep
but
flipping.
we have to like keep clicking
I'm gonna
next
go
to
back
go
real quick
through
and find out what a knuckle is.
because it had like the weights and stuff, like conversions on the front. I wish it would just have like a thing on the side.
It says nothing about a knuckle.
That's really sad. Okay, cool. We don't know what that is. Oh, well, one has
Oh,
to goes one
two
too.
bills. There's one cup. What?
Well, that's neat.
Okay, come on guys, you gotta settle on one and
Yeah.
work on it.
Well, we were just trying to figure out. They
What a
said like
knuckle.
is it knuckle of veal?
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out what it is, but it's not on the front. I don't know what it is.
No.
A lot of soups. You guys want to do a soup?
You just do salmon soup. Salmon soup.
Go for it.
There you go.
Pick one of them. 'Cause the other groups are about
bones
that.
from canned salmon. Oh, it's canned salmon. Okay.
Canned salmon soup.
Okay, that's fine. Just go with
Trim
it.
off
Go
the
with
one.
it.
Chopped fine enough. Fish.
This looks. Oh.
A thick slice of onion. Just a thick slice, you know. Quart of milk. You gotta have a double boiler. Yeah, you gotta. The soup.
It's warmed canned salmon juice.
With a thick slice of onion.
Yeah. But it sounds like this is gonna take like you only cook it for a ton of minutes, but it sounds like it's gonna take forever because you gotta.
Okay, what does it say about nutrition? Nothing.
Nope.
Nothing.
I don't think any of these will.
Good 10 minutes to go.
What kind of nutritional value does salmon have? Well, 10 minutes actually cook it, but I feel like it's gonna take probably close to 45 minutes or something because you gotta like,
You gotta salt the salmon.
and you gotta take the skin and bones off of it, like out of it.
Wait, they didn't do that before? It was
Nope.
put in the can?
Nope. I
Apparently
guess they just
not.
put in like
Whoever
whole
canned it is
fish.
fucking slack.
Oh, 20 minutes? Okay, so 30 minutes. You have to
You
learn
need
how
the
to.
measurements.
You need to learn how to skin a fish. Yeah, I don't know how to, cause they have really little bones.
Yeah. I'm learning them all right now.
I have a skin salmon. I bought some from Fresh Market and I didn't know it had skin on it still. And it had these scales on it still too, so I had to
Slice it. So you gotta know how to skin the bone of fish.
Experience.
You know your measurements. You need a double boiler.
It says cook it for 10 minutes, but it never says temperature or like any sort of.
And a quart of milk for 20 minutes.
What's a salt spoon?
Well, you're not supposed to burn it or cook it too low, right?
Salt spoon.
You better know.
I don't know what a salt spoon is.
I don't either.
Salt and fine stainer and salt. So you know, skin the bone.
So shocked and what kind of image it has to.
Okay, we better, I want each group to give a, the highlights of what you figured out. Just say what say what your recipe was, and I'll get to you last, and y'all can confirm. I'll let you confirm that one. So let's start here. The other way? Okay, I'll start the other way. Because I know these people, all the ones on this side are there. You ready?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So our recipe was hash.
And what
like
was it from?
potato hash, and it was from the Young Housekeeper. And it was made in Boston in 1846. That was kind of interesting. And like, do you want me to just go through like the questions or like?
Your main things. If you have something for each question, great.
I don't want to do all that.
Yeah, exactly. The most, like the biggest thing.
So it just assumes that you know how to mix like the minced vegetables, like the potatoes with your meat. It just assumes that you know like how to mince your vegetables and know like the proper ratio to mix both.
So it doesn't give amounts of things?
Not at all. Not at all. And then pretty much everything's from scratch. And we pretty much assume that it's for like your ingredients to just like written in like very literate like language. So like it'll be like in the thing for hash, it goes over mashed potatoes for some reason, I don't know. But it says it's highly improper for the healthy stomach. When it could have just been like, oh, it's bad.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, it's highly improper. So it like assumes that you're literate in reading like this entire thing.
And it sounds like it's got a little health information there.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, I love mashed potatoes. So.
So you're ignoring it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems like a comfort food. This seems like a recipe for like a regular comfort food, yet it's also written at this high level. Okay, great. Back there?
We looked at the bartender. And
Awesome.
we did the Bloodhound cocktails.
The what?
Bloodhound cocktail. It assumes that you know like all the measurements and what kind of glasses that you use because it has like just one jigger of Burnett's. Like if you have to know those two.
Yeah.
And then other than that, it's Burnett's old jigger.
What goes in the blood? Hey, tell us the ingredients, because I don't know what goes in a
It's
bloodhound.
shaved ice, fresh strawberries, one jigger Burnett's Old Tom gin, and then you shake it.
So the strawberries make it red, because that's what the blood. Okay. Anything else?
I mean, we just said it was probably for obviously adults or people of drinking age, and we served it like a cocktail party or a high-end bar.
What do you think that name suggests? Do you serve women bloodhounds? It's a Mandarin, but it's fruity.
Oh, what were you saying?
No, I'm just saying it's sweet. It's like sweetening the drink, so it's just interesting. You can think about the tastes that go into it, and then what the name of it is. Okay, you guys back there? Back there, in the back?
Yeah, ours was from like a U.S. history recipe site, and it was a brownie recipe from 1896. It was the first recorded like brownie recipe in the cookbook. It was from the Boston cooking school, and it was a recipe of brownies without chocolate. So.
How is that a brownie?
That's what we were saying. The main ingredient is actually pecan meat.
Uh-huh.
It's almost just like a hearty meal.
So what else is in it? So it's flour, pecans.
Flour, molasses, and egg, and a lot of meats like meat.
It's
Wow.
called something else in a brownie. I find it good.
Uh-huh,
So I'm
yeah.
expecting a brownie. And I think something.
And so that's where the name and the recipe and what it has in it really are included. Okay, y'all ready? Okay, go for it.
The book starts off giving.
Is y'all's one of these up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same as
And this is, the Estes is good food or something like that? I can't remember the title of it. Good Eats.
So the book starts off actually giving all the measurements and tells people what the measurements are, although it does use knuckle and never does explain what a knuckle is.
Uh-huh. Does anybody know what it's a beef knuckle?
Oh, you use beef knuckle, but they used it on several other
Veal?
things too, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what a knuckle is? Yeah.
It's like
what?
A veal knuckle. Uh-huh.
It's a knuckle.
Has anybody,
It's a knuckle.
do you know what it? Yeah, so it's a joint part of a veal, of a young, an immature cow. And the reason why you use it is because it's really rich with bone marrow and things like that. So it's good for stewing and things like that. Anyway, so.
The book was written by an African American during the anti-colonial.
Mm-hmm.
It requires to know measurements, but it gives you measurements, so that helps. It also requires you in this recipe for salmon soup, it requires you to know how to skin and debone a fish. That's
All of y'all can do that, right?
from a can.
I love it.
Other than that, it was like you could just use stuff around your house. It sounds like a recipe that isn't very inexpensive. Then you could probably very easily substitute any of that for the things that you actually have around your house. It doesn't sound like something you'd go to the store necessarily and buy.
Other than it calls for the canned salmon.
Well, and the equipment wise, it calls for a double boiler.
A double boiler, yeah. Right. So it's really good chronologically to show that shift towards canning and, mass production of food, mass availability. So you can have salmon wherever you are. You don't have to be on the Northwest Coast. So it's a nice recipe to show that shift in foodways.
Cheap cookbook, shows cheap ways to make food.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't make it on this British properly.
Yeah. Okay, great. Back there?
We looked at a brownie recipe on ushistoryscene.com, and it had a lot of background information, historical information about the brownie. And we learned that the first brownie was made in Pullman House Hotel in Chicago. It also mentioned different techniques in preparing the ingredients, like beating eggs, chopping pecans, and mixing all the ingredients together. Also included the different levels of measurements that you needed to know, whether you could distinguish a pinch from a smidgen or
yeah.
Also, they're for people who have health restrictions, you can substitute other ingredients for chocolate, I think you mentioned carrots.
Beets, black beans, carrots, and spinach for people with the fat, low carb, high fiber, raw being gluten-free brownie, and gluten-free. I started to experiment with changing out ingredients.
Is a carrot brownie a brownie? Sort of like the same problem y'all had.
I learned how to brownie this weekend when I was so good.
Okay. All right. Well, next class we'll look at cookbooks, and if you want to bring in examples, please feel free to do that. But we'll look at these questions in more depth, and I'll have we can use these same resources.
Keep it.